This is Elaine Benfield, and welcome to another episode of Herstories. I am so excited today to have one of my guests today is Vicki Paris Goodman. So I'm always, as Vicki, welcome so much, and thank you for your time joining Her Stories today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Elaine.
So I tell everyone when I start this is why does someone inspire me? And your story hit such my heart, and I got goosebumps. And it was one of those, you had a wonderful marriage and you ended up losing your husband, Sam, and seeing the journey that you've taken from that time, and you reinvented yourself, you found a way to survive and thrive, and you have such a great life that you led, to that moment and then continue to lead. So I do want to say, not only are you an author, you are also you've been a theater critic for over 20 years. You're a semi professional violinist, which is amazing. And you're also a mechanical engineer, real estate appraiser. Vicki, you just encompass being inspiring to myself, and I know a lot of my audience will feel the same. So once again, I'd like to welcome you to Her Stories.
Oh, thank you so much.
So I usually start, tell us who Vicki is. So who are you today, and who have you, what would you say about who you are?
Well, I guess I'm a survivor. I've kind of always been a survivor type. I see adversity and maybe it really gets me down and I think this is going to get better. So at least I've got that going for me pretty much throughout my whole life. And I'm I'm really happy to say that after I lost the love of my life, which even though I'm a survivor, I thought I'd be devastated and lost for a long time. It didn't happen that way. I kind of felt something from outside of myself making me more positive than I would normally be by nature, like a helping hand guiding me from somewhere. Um, because after Sam died, almost immediately, I was
Mhm.
flooded with optimism, which was so strange. I'm not a particularly negative person, but I'm not particularly positive either. I'm kind of middle of the road. But I was flooded with optimism. I saw opportunities coming my way to do things that maybe I've always wanted to do, but never did. Maybe I couldn't before because of, just circumstances. And suddenly I was embracing all these opportunities and these things were working out. They were actually resulting in success. For example, uh, I received an email shortly after Sam died that the community playhouse where we live was having a staged reading. And I thought, wow, as a theater critic for over 20 years, I always thought maybe someday I'd try acting. So I went to the audition and wound up getting the female lead in this
Okay.
thing and had the time of my life.
Yeah.
So I guess I guess the one thing that I'm really happy about with regard to myself is that even though it seems strange to me
Mhm.
that all this was happening, I let myself be led. This helping hand from somewhere,
Yeah.
maybe our higher power,
Mhm.
decided to help me. And even though I'm kind of a control freak, I said, okay, I trusted it. And I said, I'm not gonna let guilt hold me back or anything like that. I will just see where this goes.
Well, and it's a beautiful story, and I want to go back to, Sam, and I'm envious in many ways. I was married for 22 years, but now we got divorced, and I look and go, I don't know if I found the love of my life yet, but you did, and when you find that, and it goes so quickly because how many years together were you with Sam?
21 plus. So
Yeah.
we got married fairly late in life.
Yeah.
I was in my 40s, he was almost 50.
Yeah, but that's so wonderful. So, you know, at the moment when you lost Sam, were you prepared? Because I think it's one of the hardest. Like my mother, when my dad died after 44 years, she was not prepared. She had no idea of like how to be alone and just live. And maybe because you met Sam a little later, how do you, the fear of that, how did you get through that?
Yeah, I was lucky in one sense. I'm kind of independent by nature, and I did have a number of years of adult life where I wasn't married and took care of myself. And even when married to Sam, I was the one who paid the bills and took care of all the insurance and all of that stuff. So I didn't have that issue when he died. I already was doing those things. So I are caught off guard with when they lose their spouse, when the spouse might have been the one to take care of all those things. So I didn't have that problem. And
Which is
my
so,
advice
which is so
actually on that. Yeah.
It's so good because that's my mom. That's when my father was, I have a sister, and he was like, I want you both to be independent because he met my mom was from Germany and she came to the States and he took care of her. That was that generation. But he was like, my girls will not be that. You're going to know how to do billing. You're going to know how to do house maintenance or whatever. And I do feel like you were lucky from that because I know that's a horrible, that like, women don't know insurance policies and sometimes they don't know what bank numbers are. I mean, it's wild. But that
Oh,
you had that and careers before, I'm sure gave you that a little bit of the stability around, this devastating loss.
right. Because I wasn't married and didn't have children early on, I did work, and my degree was in mechanical engineering, and then later on I have a short attention span for any one thing, even if it's something I enjoy. So I went to work as a real property appraiser. That wasn't as long a career as the engineering career, but yeah, it was a lot of fun to just have two careers.
But it's
Yeah.
nice. It's nice. Well, that I love that because I feel like I've been doing the same type of high tech job, and I'm like, I love that you really have transformed yourself many times in your life. And
Hmm.
do you remember some of those? I always think it's so important that, each of us go through really dark days. Do you remember your like lowest low day that how did you get out of that? Because I have like a clear snapshot in my life. And I remember saying, I'll never be this low again. Do you remember that?
Do you
One point.
are you talking about after Sam
Yeah,
died?
after Sam died.
Okay. I'll tell you, there were sad times, especially in the evenings when I'd be home alone and, it'd be dark out and I just, so what I took to doing was reading the last greeting card Sam gave me, which was about 6 months, not even 5 months before he died. It was a Valentine's card. And, it made me feel better to do that every single night. I did it for a year, and then I'd kiss the bottom of the card and put it away and I'd go to sleep. But what happened for me that really created some challenges emotionally was when COVID descended on us, because that happened less than a year after Sam died. And I'd been doing really well by creating a balance of activity and alone time. The alone time spent processing the loss, and the activity, was just, having lunch with a friend, going on a hike with a friend, doing this community theater thing. I started singing. I started doing karaoke at the
Mhm.
recommendation of some friends, and it turns out I can sing. And playing in the orchestra that I'd played in until we got Sam's diagnosis. And then I rejoined the orchestra after he died. So there were all these things, but I made sure not to do what many people told me to do. They said, stay as busy as possible so you don't have time to think. I knew that was the wrong
Mhm.
path. I created this balance. Well, when COVID happened, all of a sudden, a lot of those activities shut down, not to mention the support group I was going to and the meetings with the hospital once or twice a month for an entire year after Sam died. All of that shut down. And suddenly I was spending way too much time by myself. And over the next year or so, I had three depressions. And interestingly, each one lasted precisely 10 days and then poof,
Interesting.
gone. Anyway, yeah, COVID presented a big challenge. I'm not sure I don't think I would have gone through those depressions had that not happened, but I'll never know for sure. And those were really low moments. I would just sit in a chair in my living room staring out the window for 10 days straight,
And then
hoping
what
this
was
would.
it? Was it like a snap for you where you're like, hold yourself out? Or how did you, at that 10-day, what got you out of that depression? Because I think that's
I
so,
don't I don't know. They just ended because I'm not a depressed
yeah,
person. So this wasn't my normal state of being.
yeah.
And so maybe,
I mean, it's amazing that they're all at 10 days, that your
yeah, isn't
body
that weird?
needed, but your body and your mind needed to shut down to get to that point. An 11th day, you're like, I'm done. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really incredible in its way that somehow your body's doing that for you. Or a
Yeah,
power, as we talk, like a being or something's pulling you out of that. It's amazing.
right. Yeah, and I'm sorry I can't really answer the question because I
No,
just don't know.
that's okay because I think, one of the things I hear all the time, the struggle with being depressed. How does one get out? Some people need medicine, some people just need time, some people, each of us have our own way to survive. I have kids, so for me, they pulled me out of any form, and I just, for me, I went through a divorce, which is different, but a loss in its own way.
Oh,
And I think
definitely.
people just they have to find what that balance is to, pull themselves out. So let's talk about. I love this. You then wrote a book to Sam with love. Tell me more about what was the catalyst to have you. And I love that you've had many jobs and you're talented in many ways. Did you ever think of yourself as a writer?
Well, think about it. I wrote theater reviews for over
Oh,
20 years. So
valid.
I was writing all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, well, I can do this. I'm a decent writer. So when I realized that this helping hand was guiding me not just to optimism and opportunities, but to insights and revelations that I don't have these, you know, moments of wisdom.
Yeah.
Maybe once in a while, I think all of us do once in a while, but they were coming pretty fast and furious, compared to what I consider the normal pace of a human being just, getting a thunderbolt of wisdom. So I was thinking, what is going on? Suddenly I'm understanding things and having this clarity about life and death and loss. And I thought, I really think this entire story can help other people if I address it correctly in a book. So I wrote the book. It's called To Sam with Love, a surviving spouse's story of inspired grief. And I know inspired grief, might make people go, wait, what? And it is kind of an oxymoron in one way that you might think about it, but I kept it in the subtitle of the book because it's what I believe I experienced.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
that's amazing. And how long did it take you to write the book? Did it just because, as you said, your background with writing, but did it come out flowing? Did it take you a while? Were there, how was the process for you to write the book? Because it's a first book for you.
yeah, I didn't know I could do it really.
Mhm.
It took about 3 weeks.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I just kept writing. I'd go up to my office upstairs and start writing, and 6 or 7 hours later, I'd come up for air and think. So then I thought, oh, I guess I can do a chapter a day, and there's a preface and an epilogue too. So let's say 18 pieces, and there were a couple of days when I had things planned and I couldn't write. Basically, it took about like 21 days, 3 weeks. Then I had a few friends read it and they said, don't refer to the story, tell the story. And I thought,
Mhm.
but we're not famous people. Who's going to be interested in the stories? We want to know the stories.
Mhm.
So then I went back and added about 45% to it. And that took another couple of weeks. And then then
But
it got published.
it's true. And you had the idea that your goal was to help other people and help people going through the loss of a loved one. And your story is inspiring, but it's hard to be like, oh, well, this is my story. But how much people can resonate with it and learn from it, I think is so key. Because I feel like, your story can help people, but it's in that, how did you get the confidence to go, hey, this is really going to work? Did you know when you started writing going, oh, I'm really onto it? Or was it when your girlfriends read it and they're like, oh, yeah, you really need to make it really more personal? When did you go, oh, I think this really will be helping and it's a good book?
Well, I'm not sure I did the right thing by expanding it. I don't know. People are responding really well to this book. Um, I have a few, some reviews online that are all 5 stars. I couldn't believe it. Some of them are from other authors. These are people that don't know me, and they're mostly on Goodreads and there are a couple on Amazon. But I couldn't believe it, even though I know I'm a decent writer, I didn't know I could get this story right. And so it's an uplifting book. It's even funny in places. This is the tack I took.
Yeah.
I decided that I should tell these stories about Sam's life, a little of my own and our time together, in order to let readers get to know us first. Because this is what I thought. I thought if they get to know us first, then the impact of Sam's death, when I get to that in the middle of the book, the impact of his death and of my loss
Yeah.
will mean more to them.
Yeah.
Then, when I spend the latter third of the book talking about what happened to me, all these inspirational things after he died that I wasn't expecting at all,
Mhm.
that will kind of complete the whole story and also provide kind of a roadmap to people who are stuck in grief, because that happens a lot, to moving forward.
Yeah. How do you are you ever mad that this is the path? Or do you feel, because you have so many positive things, you know, with the loss of Sam, so much has happened to you wonderful afterwards, but are you just some days like, why did this happen to me? Or you don't have
Never.
those, oh, I love that,
It's
Vicki.
never happened, which is really kind of weird because I have spent some of my life being pretty angry. Stuff happens in childhood. We don't need to get into that. But yeah, I am not an anger-free person by any stretch of the imagination, but I haven't been angry for 1 second, not even when Sam was still alive. Between diagnosis to death was 2 years, and I was never angry about any of that. And I did do a lot of my grieving for Sam right after we got the diagnosis.
Yeah.
That really threw me for about a week or so before I decided I needed to just accept the reality and move forward as with strength and helpfulness for him.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know when he'd really need to be cared for. It turned out he did really well for a year and a half, and it was only the last six
Mhm.
months or so that was, where he needed me to take care of him.
Yeah. And I
And
think
that's
it's
a funny
interesting.
story too that I tell in the book.
Oh, tell us.
Because, well, let me, it's not very long. Um, Early in our marriage, I know I'm kind of a self-involved person, not so much anymore, but I used to be. And so I said to Sam, I said, sweetie, do you ever wonder about what would happen if one of us were to get sick and the other one had to take care of the sick one? And he was a very funny man, Sam. And he said, the thought has crossed my mind. And I said, I don't blame you a bit. I understand completely, and I want to make a promise to you, and I will keep this promise. I will take care of you if you should ever get sick. You don't have anything to worry about. What I didn't tell him was that I wasn't sure I could do it without resenting it.
Yeah.
There wasn't a moment's resentment. It was hard for me. I
Yeah.
had some anxiety attacks. There was a time toward the end where I had to tell myself, Vicki, if you don't get a handle on this anxiety and illness, yeah, I've started getting colds like every 2 weeks. I had pain in a kidney. I had migraine headaches, almost every day that I would have to medicate for. And I said, if you don't get a handle on this, you're going to predecease your terminally ill husband.
Yeah.
And suddenly I was able to just make it stop. And the sickness and the pain and the migraines stopped. And I was so glad I was able to do that so that I could properly take care of him, which I
Well,
did.
well, and I think it's knowing, that you get a diagnosis. And I always question, and I think life is so hard where I've, friends and family that have lost someone like that, and you don't have a chance and you didn't know it was coming. Do you feel that having, I think it's a hard question because it's retrospect, but do you feel that time gave you to value who Sam was, your relationship, help him toward the end of his life? Do you feel that helped you with the grieving process that after he passed away, not saying it's easier, but you had those 2 years. Do you think it helped you in any way?
The 2 years that we had together weren't particularly close. I think I even looked this up online because I thought back on it after he died and I thought, God, it's like our marriage wasn't even the same during that time and I didn't even realize it while it was going on. He was focused on what he could do to maybe try and survive this, even though we were told there was zero chance of it. I was being optimistic too because I thought, why not? But we didn't talk a lot about, personal things. Things really changed for us. And that's kind of
Mhm.
an odd thing that I haven't been asked by anyone else. And you're the first one to kind of ask about that. And so this is something I've thought about since he died, but I haven't really talked about it to anyone. So thank you for asking. Yeah, things changed. And I don't think that had to happen.
Yeah.
But since neither one of us, I don't think, really realized it was going on, that we should start communicating more, it just didn't happen for us. But I don't, uh, you know, after he died, things were so unexpectedly optimistic that I am now confident that whatever happened the way it was supposed to. Maybe, and this is what I looked up online, maybe we weren't supposed to be close during that time. Maybe kind of a syndrome or
Mhm.
result of this process is that the spouse that will ultimately be the survivor starts pulling away a little bit as
Yeah.
a kind of a
And
defense
and
mechanism or
it
a
becomes,
survival mechanism.
and you're not only a wife now, you are a caretaker. So
Yeah.
that role is more nurse. And I know, my father got sick. He was 67 and died at 71. And my mom resented it. She lived 19 years after him. And she resented that he got sick. And I'm like, but it's not, he had a heart problem. It wasn't his fault. But she felt survival. And she said many times, he left me. And I'm like, he didn't leave you. He died. Like he would have stayed. He would have 100%. It wasn't his path. And I wonder if that's part of, as you said, the survivor's piece, that you have this different role and that your relationship does change with it. So that's really interesting.
Well, one of the insights I had was that, you know, maybe maybe this is the way it was meant to be. Maybe I am not meant to be with Sam for the rest of my life. Maybe, into our dotage, our old age.
Mhm.
Maybe I am meant to do something else.
Mhm.
And I think God has a plan for each of us.
Mhm.
And for some of us, the plan is to live life in pieces
Mhm.
so that we can do different things, learn different things,
Mhm.
accomplish different things before we transition. So when I look at it that way, I don't have any resentment at all about it. So these are some of the insights or revelations that caused me to want to write the book
But I think
because
it's
I think
interesting. Sorry, it looks like my some connection with Riverside. Can you still hear me, Vicki?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, there's a little lag. I'll cut this piece out. But so it's interesting because I couldn't agree with you more. Like, we have different experiences, but the loss of getting divorced, who I thought I was going to be with my ex-husband for my life, I have learned there's different chapters. And what you just said, my friends are like, why are you not bitter? You had a path that you thought you were going down. You married the person that you thought you're going to be with forever. And I keep saying, but life changes. I wouldn't be where I am today without what happened. You wouldn't be where you are today without what happened. You were given this other chance to have the creativity. If Sam was still here, which of course you'd want, you wouldn't be where you are. Your path took a totally different turn. And I think it's important for people to realize just because it's not the way you wanted it to go doesn't mean it's still not a wonderful opportunity. It's just a different life.
Absolutely. And I also think that this assumption that people seem to have that, oh, there's one soulmate for me, I no longer believe that. I think maybe you can have more than one.
I
There's all kinds of
couldn't
things we assume, but why do
I
we assume them?
I couldn't agree with you more. And I always believed in one soulmate. And then I realized there's one soulmate for a particular time in your life. That's the way I completely have a different outlook. I always thought you'd be one person and one person only. And it's like, no, I think we do meet people at different stages in our life that, fill that void that we have, or that partnership or companionship or romance or whatever. And I do think that it makes me so happy to know I'm 51 and there's still chance for me to find the love of my life. I'm looking forward to that when I'm ready, that chapter to continue.
I
Um,
think it's probable.
I think it's when you're willing and you're open and you're receptive to it. As I'm sure, what if your friends say, are you ready to date? Are you, dating anyone? How are you in that stage of your life and that piece of your life?
About a year and 3/4 after Sam died, I suddenly woke up one morning and
Mhm.
said, I think I want to meet someone.
Oh,
And
that's
I
wonderful.
thought, this is brand new feeling for you. Why don't you wait a week and see if you still feel the same way? So I waited a week, still felt the same way. And I thought, okay, none of my friends knew anybody who, was available or anyway, any man. So I went online, which is a terrible, horrible process. It was awful because of how dishonest the whole process is. But I met someone really nice. And we've been together for, gosh, almost 3 years now. His
Oh,
name's Mike. He's completely different from Sam. In fact, on our first date, after meeting online, I said, I can't be with, he's too different. He's not what I should be, and anything like who I should be with. So I'd already determined that if he wanted to see me again, I would just gently say, I just don't think it's the right match, or something. So he asked me, when can I see you again? And what comes out of my mouth is, how about next weekend? And I thought, why did you do that, Vicki? The truth is, I liked him, and it's worked out now for 3 years. So
But it's nice I love that so much because when I envision, who my next partner is, I always think it's going to be someone totally different. Because now I'm sure, in the end, you learn what you liked and didn't like, and no relationship's perfect. And so what does he think about you writing these books and talking about Sam? And, how does he feel about it? Because it must be, I mean, you're so successful, but how does he feel about it?
he's been pretty good overall, really great, actually. He even sets, he brings up Sam sometimes, he'll say something like, oh, what would Sam think of this? Not all the time, but every once in a while, he will bring up Sam, and I like that, and for at least the first year, I had all these pictures of Sam and me downstairs in my house. Mike never said a thing until finally, about a year later, he said, do you think you could just put a few of them away and maybe put a picture of us out? And I said, you know what? I'm going to take them all upstairs to the office. He never goes up there. And I will put a couple of pictures of us around, and I did. And it was just really nice that he waited a year before suggesting that, and by that time I was really ready to do what he wanted.
Oh,
And yeah,
that's so
so,
wonderful.
but what's also nice about Mike is that when other people bring up Sam, and, I have, and so there's a conversation about Sam, if he's present, he participates in it, or he listens and he doesn't resent it, people are pretty sensitive about bringing up Sam in Mike's presence, but sometimes it just comes up inadvertently, and he's great about it. So,
But
and
in
about
life,
writing the book, he sat down in my den sometimes for 6 or 7 hours while I would be up there writing. He'd be, I don't know, playing games on his phone or watching TV or, talking on the phone or whatever. And he didn't bother me at all. I said, "My God, you've been down here for 7 hours and he said, "It's okay, write the book, finish the book." So
that
yeah, he's
and
been good
having
for
this,
me.
I love it. And having Mike be so supportive of you, I'm sure gives you that, encouragement that you need because, it's a new journey for you. And I love hearing the support and you found someone that, makes you happy. Um, so, what do you hope people can learn from your experience? When people read your book and get to know who you are, what life lesson would you give them or lessons?
Okay, I think that if I was blessed with this guidance that came from outside myself, surely it must be available to everyone. Let yourself be led. Let yourself understand that some people are meant to live a life in segments, and that your next chapter is that next segment. And let yourself be open to the goodness and opportunities that come your way,
Yeah.
rather than getting bogged down in the guilt and the sadness. Of course, experience it. We all have to, especially when it was a good marriage and someone we truly loved. But it's not necessarily a bad thing that you now have a next chapter to look forward to. I would really suggest people try and see it that way.
Yeah, no, I think that's a beautiful way to put it because you can move on, you can survive. I think some people, and I'm sure you understand completely of there's days where it's so hard to look and go, oh, is there another chapter for my life? And there is, health permitting, of course, but there really is that next journey.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you now tell us now. So you're currently writing your second book.
Oh, yeah. This one actually got started a few years even before Sam died. I was dabbling with um, a kind of a funny topic. I call it speed bumps and other impediments to life in the fast lane. And it's stories about the trials and tribulations of life, especially from the point of view of a type A personality, which I have been most of my life.
Mhm.
Not so much now because I don't. I guess circumstances are different after you retire, So I've calmed down, but yeah, Sam had to deal with a type A personality for all those years, the impatience and
Mhm.
all of that. So it's a pretty self-deprecating book in some places, which is just fun for me, and say, can you believe I actually did this or acted this way
Mhm.
or reacted, in this way?
I
So
love
it's
I
self-deprecating, and
love
I
it.
like that.
I love your titles of both your books. I love you of that humor. It's just listening to what it is and the story. I can picture your humor coming through. And I love being self-deprecating as well. If I can't make fun of myself. Um, so I want to also talk about, so I guess let me ask you one question, and then I want to lead into something you have for our audience. So I could talk to you so long. I'm so inspired by you, Vicki, and I think you're such an example of someone who really reinvented yourself, but also took your skills of a writer, being a theater critic, and turned it into something so meaningful. Not that it wasn't for that piece, but to inspire other women going through grief really is, I love it. I can't wait to see where this leads for you. And I'm so happy I get to know you. Um, when I want to ask one, question of, so what inspires you?
Oh, there's so many things that inspire me. Nature inspires me. Beautiful music. I love classical music. I'm a violinist,
Hmm.
but I love jazz and 60s pop music. And, and I love singing these songs at karaoke. Um, I love meeting people who maybe who write articles on political topics or history, and people I've read, and then I have a chance to meet them. Not that I ever know what to say to them. I always get kind of tongue tied, but it's so inspiring to meet these people, and I've had a chance to do that recently, so in a few times. And I love traveling. There's so many things that inspire me. I'm inspired by our country's constitution
Hmm.
and its
Yeah.
founding.
Yeah.
It's
Those are
kind of endless, the
No,
list.
see, I'm the same way. Yeah, everything in the Constitution, I'm always amazed when it was written and how much is still valid today. I know we have challenges with some of it, but it's that to me always blows my mind. But
Hmm.
um, so one thing that I'd love you to talk about, and where everyone can find your books, and I will promise to put it on my herstories.com. So anyone who wants to get more information on Vicki and her website and get her books and everything, and you have an offer for some of our listeners. So I'd love you to
Yes,
think about that.
I do. I do. Thank you for letting me give your listeners this offer. Okay, first of all, the best pricing currently available for my book To Sam with Love is at inspiredgrief.com. I actually have two websites, inspiredgrief.com and vickiparisgoodman.com. So they'll find blog articles at Vicki Paris. There is a way to buy the book at a discount. I've discounted it, so it's currently the best pricing available. Consider getting two copies, one for you and one for a grieving friend. Everybody seems to know somebody in this position who
Yeah.
may be struggling. I also want to make you aware of a special offer.
Mhm.
I reserved some of my most startling insights for a three-part audio series. Some of these insights came to me after I published the book. They're in an audio series that I've recorded and have made available as a free gift. So please go to inspiredgrief.com and subscribe to the audio episodes. There is some really startling material there that I think will shift the way survivors think of death and loss and allow them to move happily into the future. They'll also help you eliminate the guilt that holds so many back from living happily after they lose the love of their life. So these audio episodes are about 12 to 15 minutes each. They're not very long. So just visit inspiredgrief.com, enter your first name and your email address, and you'll get access to the three-part audio series for a limited time. Okay? It's a free gift, so please get the audio episodes.
I love it, and I
Thank
love that you wrote the book and then you had more things to talk through. I love that, and I love audiobooks and that. So I'm super excited. Listeners, I'll make sure that you have the websites. It will be up on herstories.com, so you can connect with Vicki, and then also go to inspiredgrief.com. And Vicki, it's such a pleasure to talk to you. I've enjoyed getting to know you, and just you're inspiring, and just the hope that life does move on, and it's taking the courage, and then look at you finding such a great new journey. So I can't, as I said, I can't wait to see what you do next, and see the next book and everything beyond that. So it's been a pleasure having you. I look forward, and hopefully you can come back to Her Stories and talk about your next book another time.
Oh, that would be wonderful. And thank you so much for having me, Elaine. The pleasure's all been mine.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned to another episode of Her Stories.